President Joe Biden and Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy have reached an agreement to raise the debt ceiling.
We still have a lot of work to do, but I believe this is an agreement in principle that's worthy of the American people.
This is a deal is good news, I believe you'll see, for the American people. The agreement prevents the worst possible crisis, a default for the first time in our nation's history.
Everybody has debts. Even the richest have loans and debts to clear, and that's obvious. But to what extent these debts can grow? Curious? Let's talk about 31.4 trillion debts. You heard it right. The 31.4 trillion debts the United States of America is struggling with. Now, why we should even talk about it? In early 2023, some economists and Wall Street analysts predicted that the recent election of Californian Republic Kevin McCarthy to House Speaker raised the concerns that lawmakers could vote against lifting the debt ceiling, because it increasing the possibility of US defaulting on its debts. Now let's discuss what is debt ceiling and what would happen if US defaults on its debt. Debt ceiling. As per internet and economics, the debt ceiling is the maximum amount of money that the United States can borrow cumulatively by issuing bonds. The debt ceiling was created under the Secondary Liberty Bond Act of 1917 and is also known as debt limit or statutory debt limit. If you are not clear about what is debt ceiling, probably why debt ceiling, should clear the haze. Why USA have debt ceiling in first place? The US government spends more money than it takes in. Government has done this off and on since the country was founded. But now it's doing it more often than ever. By each year, the trend of debts has only skyrocketed. To make up this, government borrows by selling the bonds to the investors. The major investors are Japan and China. Each month, when government spends more than it brings in, it means when government runs in deficit, it has to borrow to balance the things out. And some of all this borrowing is the federal debt, and it has grown in dollars when measured against the economy. As this cycle continued, government introduced the system where Congress had to vote each time when the treasury need to borrow the money. And to have a control over this, Congress switched to setting a ceiling on the debts. So if the debt bumps up against the limit, Congress has to get the votes to lift the ceiling, and that's where we are now. Now would Congress refuse to raise the debt ceiling? It's Congress who votes so that US governments can spend money. And most of the time they ended up spending more than what they have. Or if you are asking, Congress votes again so the treasury can borrow the money and this is what gets to spending. Refusing to raise the debt ceiling doesn't cut spending. It's like refusing to pay the credit card bills for the stuff you already brought. So if you don't raise the debt ceiling, treasury will run out of cash, and does US government. How would this impact the common people in USA if government delays in raising the debt ceiling? US government uses tax revenue and debts to pay the country's bill, like funding the government program, social securities, Medicare, military, etc. And the biggest bill here is the interest on debts. Last time when US government faced a similar circumstance, when treasury was close enough to hit the ceiling, it contemplated by paying as many bills as it could each day with cash it had on the hand, and delaying the payment on the rest. Bills should be paid in the order in which they arrived. So longer the delay, higher the bill pile. Government employees, payroll, social securities, benefits of senior citizen and others would be forced to make their due payments without their money. What is impact on US government if they delay in raising the debt ceiling? Interest on national debt is something which needs to be paid on time to maintain the credit rating. Any defaults or delay can endanger the reputation and the trust of the world on the ability of the US government to manage its finance. And this could lead the investors to demand the high interest rates for treasury bond. The stock price will fall and so does dollars, and this could end up again impacting the taxpayers. Let's see the key takeaways from our earlier discussion. First, the debt ceiling is the maximum amount that the US government can borrow by issuing the bonds. Second, the Treasury Department must find other ways to pay expenses when debt ceiling is reached. Otherwise, there is a risk that the US will default on its debts. Third, debt ceiling has been raised or suspended several times to avoid the risk of default. Fourth, there have been number of showdowns over the debt ceiling, some of which have led to the US government shutdowns. Fifth, shutdowns are the result of conflicts between the White House and the Congress, with the debt ceiling used as a leverage to push the budgetary agendas. What is current situation? US debt is a core of economy and it's made of bonds. Now, who lends out the bonds? It can be cities, states, banks, corporation, or US government itself. It is basically, I owe you a guarantee on US government or the institution will pay the interest, and the interest is decided on basics of risk. Higher the risk, higher the reward, and US Treasury bonds have been considered as the safest among the all. In simple terms, it is the benchmark. In current situation, bond could be affected in two ways. First one, a contentious fight could make investors worry, and as a result, higher interest rate would be demanded like we discussed. Same could happen if credit rating is impacted. Second, any defaults in debt ceiling could lead to brief recession, and if ain't fixed, can lead to economic downturn we experienced in 2008. Why we people in India should be concerned? When market face dangers, we all know investors generally park their money in less risky assets such as bonds, golds and dollars. Of all the foreign exchange reserves held by world central bank, US dollar accounts for 48% of it. The dollar index has in fact strengthened in recent months, which has put the rupee under pressure. So let's say if the US government indeed defaults, it will lose its financial prominency and the center of world trade. Already as rupee is in under pressure, our government could have parked its money in bonds whose value would be reduced to incredibly low levels. This will in turn impact the stock market and the economy as well. What eventually happened in US? Just days before, the United States was set to default on its debts for the first time. The US Congress approved the obvious bill to lift the debt ceiling. The bill will soon be a law and it will spare the US from the defaults on its 31.4 trillion debts. The bill was approved by the Senate with a majority of 63 votes. As the ceiling is raised, government should now be able to run things smoothly and pay interest for bonds on time. Hopefully, we are expecting the volatility across the global markets to settle down for now. Let's see how government would deal the situation if they bump into debt ceiling again in the future. That's it we have for today. If you haven't subscribed our channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in another video.